All right, so we're headed out on our 2-mile walk. I did not film yesterday's. I was a little more enthusiastic about actually getting a little more out of yesterday's than I normally do when I bring the camera and just chat, because I walk slower. I did actually jog a little bit. Not a whole lot. I jogged maybe about a half a mile of the whole 2-mile walk. But there again, it's better than nothing. Today is going to be a slow day. Oh yeah, yesterday, of course, didn't have my camera with me. I did jog a little more than I normally do, if I even do jog. And I cut 2 minutes off of my time. So, well, I cut 2 minutes off of my best time. Now again, taking into consideration that I'm not a jogger, I'm not a runner, I'm not a long distance runner, and I am not a sprinter. I don't do this out of some kind of desire to condition myself for running sports or anything to that nature. So take that into consideration, and that I only do this out of fun and entertainment, and I'm 57 years old. Normally, I do 2 miles in about a half hour. Yesterday, I did it in 28 minutes. I consider that pretty decent for me, considering. Now, is that fantastic? Probably not. I am definitely not going to be breaking any records. So, yesterday, like I said, I did a little more jogging than I normally do. I got back to the apartment, and my next door neighbor, who has an 8-year-old boy, who doesn't really have a lot of people to hang out with, his own age or otherwise, and he always sees me take off from my walks, and he always wants me to stay out there and play with him. And I told him that when I got back, if I wasn't too tired, we'd see what we could do. Well, I got back, and even though I did my fastest time, I wasn't tired. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even sweating nearly as much as I normally do anyway. And he wanted to race me, because he knows that I go out walking, so he wanted to race me, and it wasn't too far. It was more of a sprint than anything. So he set up the boundaries, and we ran it, and I went faster than him, and he didn't like that, so he wanted to do it again. This time he wanted to make it a lot longer, and I'm guessing he figured if it was longer, he'd have a better chance of winning. Well, he didn't win that one either, but I did get a cramp in my upper right thigh, and it's still there today. Now, again, 57 years old. I don't recover from things like that like I used to, but I also don't use that kind of stuff as an excuse to not do stuff. So I do have a cramp. It's still knotted up. I can still feel it, but best way to get rid of it is to work it out. So last night, I also got a couple toe straps, small ones. I mean, they're pretty decently thick, but They're small. I don't use them to tow cars or anything. I was using them out in the woods when I was putting up shelters and things like that. But anyway, I went ahead and strapped my tire dummy together with the tow straps. So I got my tire dummy up a little more secure. As well, I made a PVC stick dummy that I attached to the tire dummy. So now I'm going to be able to work some stick work and things to that nature on that tire dummy. So that's going to be fun and interesting. So I'm sure this isn't really necessary to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. There are a lot, and a lot may be understating, but there are a lot of keyboard commandos and couch commandos on YouTube watching martial art videos. Just by reading comments, there's a lot of people who really truly have no clue, or they believe that the old 1970s chopsaki karate movies and kung fu movies are realistic, or they just think they know everything, or they're overestimating their actual abilities. There's a lot of them out there. So I'm going to chat a bit about some of the really common issues I have with this group of people. One is, for some reason, and I'm not going to dispute that, for me personally, the truest and real reason I've trained my whole life is for realistic encounters in real life, for real street fighting, for real combat in any form that it presents itself to me in life. Truly, that's the only thing that I'm concerned with. But what people consider viable is interpretational. Now, I'm very accepting of the fact that my personal opinion is not the view of everybody, and I'm okay with that. Anytime I express myself, it's purely from my personal experience and from my belief. That's it. I'm not trying to say, I never will say something is wrong, because, again, interpretational. As a general rule I have is that if your martial arts still practices the same way that it did 100 years ago, 200 years ago, when it was created, whatever, it's probably not realistically adapted to today's society. And I could even say, if you still train the same way you trained 30 years ago, you're probably outdated. So that's just my personal opinion. Now, a lot of people make an assumption that all martial arts are designed for this realistic combat, regardless of what you consider realistic combat, because interpretational. But it seems to me that most people want to bitch about. Well, that won't work. Try that in a real fight. These people don't get that there are other reasons for doing martial arts other than learning how to kick the shit out of somebody. Now, personally, it's the only reason I give a shit about it. But I get that there's other reasons for it. I don't automatically assume that when someone is doing a kung fu or karate kata that was created 300 years ago, that they're doing it to learn how to defend themselves in a street fight. You know, I don't look at that as the only reason. So, one of the biggest things that gets me is this: try that against a real fighter. Now, I am a retired MMA fighter, and I do personally prefer what I consider realistic martial art above the more traditional systems. But when you sit in the comforts of your home and tell somebody on the internet that what they're doing sucks and won't work in a real fight, and if you want to test it out, here we go. So, saying that it won't work in a real street fight, and then turning around and telling somebody the way to test that is to go to an MMA gym and test it out, shows me that you have no idea what a real street fight is or what MMA is. MMA is not street fighting. It is a sport with rules, very strict and set rules. You can't street fight in an MMA match. So comparing those two things shows me your lack of knowledge. In the last year or so, I haven't gotten quite as many comments or read as many comments that state that sort of thing, but you still get that on occasion. I had one person watching some of my Aiki videos and telling me that I must be in a McDojo and that what I'm doing wouldn't work in a real fight, and I needed to go to an MMA gym and test it out so that I could be shown that what I'm doing sucks. Now, there's a lot wrong with that, in my viewpoint. One is, I don't think that person even knows what a McDojo is, because I don't do any of the common McDojo bullshit. And if it weren't for the fact that I need to keep it going, I need kids in there, and I don't have too many as it is anyway. But if it weren't for the fact that I need them to keep the dojo going, I wouldn't even teach kids. That's one thing. I don't have ridiculous pricing. I don't force them into belt tests. Basically anything a McDojo is, I'm not. I did inform the person that I was a retired MMA fighter, and I think because he was telling me what I did would not work in a real fight or in a cage, and I made my very famous comment of, man, I wished you would have told me that years ago, because dang, I've been in a lot of street fights and I've been in many cage fights, and everything that I do works pretty decent for me. And if he would have informed me it didn't work, I probably wouldn't have done it. So anyway, my statement I was a retired MMA fighter, he came back with, I watched one of your videos and clearly you're not. Well, unfortunately, he didn't watch the ones of me in a cage fighting. Clearly he missed that one, or those. There's, how many are up there? I don't know. I maybe only have 3. Maybe 3 of them on my YouTube channel is of me actually in a cage fighting. I have a considerable amount of training up, I think. Most of it is my Aikido, because that's just what I'm into right now. But regardless, when he told me that clearly I couldn't be a retired fighter because I suck and clearly my stuff doesn't work, and from what he saw on that one video, I clearly don't have the skills to be a fighter. So at that point, I just ignored it and considered that either it was a 12-year-old dingle, or it was just somebody trying to goat me into some kind of argument that isn't really going to do anything. So I just ignored it and he went away. So, every once in a while, I see on videos, because I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and 99.9% of them are martial art videos. And people are constantly belittling others' martial art videos. Now, usually it's probably just some stupid punk kid who's just trying to cause an argument, or it's somebody who thinks they know best and their way is right and everybody else is wrong. I don't really care for either type, so I say there's no such thing as right and wrong. There is no right way for everybody. There is no wrong way for everybody. There's plenty of stuff out there that will work. Not for me, but will work. So I don't, again, I always fall back on Taekwondo. It's not, if anyone's watched my videos, it's not a shock that I don't really care for it. Matter of fact, I don't truly have generally any kind word for any Korean martial art. That's just me personally. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm just saying that's my viewpoint. But I know a lot of people that could kick the shit out of me with high flashy flippy kicks. There's got to be plenty of them out there. Fortunately, I've not ever ran into any of them, but I'm sure they're there. Now, I don't go out on the street starting fights. I won't back down from one, but I don't start them. And generally, if somebody picks a fight with you, especially on the street, they're really not going to be skilled or educated in martial arts, because skilled and educated martial artists don't go out on the street and start fights. I've always been told, and I agree with it, just to be on the safe side, I've always been told that you want to train like you're going to be fighting someone as good or better than you. Now, I don't disagree with that. I think that's a great way to look at it. Now, realistically, I find that doesn't really generally happen. And strictly talking about street fighting, and I know that nowadays it's probably less prevalent than it was many years ago, but I'm sure it still happens in certain areas. But and I can't say that I haven't been in a tussle or two in the last 10 or 12 years. Clearly that's not true. But generally I have found that in an actual random street fight situation, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back and I'm not exaggerating, I have never found anybody remotely educated or trained in any martial art that I've ever had any real serious conflicts with on the street. It just hasn't happened. I'm 57, it's 2023, and out of every single conflict I've ever been in the street, I can't really say anybody has had any real actual training or skill in a martial art. I have had 2 people attempt to use the greatest martial art ever created by man, Ching Chang Pow. I have had 2 people attempt that style on me. I'm still here. I've never been shot, so it didn't work too well for them. I was in one knife fighting incident. Right off the bat, he executed very poor judgment, and that situation did not go well for him at all. But other than that, all of the other instances that I've been in any conflicts have been just strictly hand to hand. And now, could have they had some training? It's possible, I guess. Were some of them stronger and better than me? Sure. I'm sure I've been in some tussles with some people that's had, well, I ain't no sure about it. I know I've been in some tussles with people that's had a hell of a lot more street experience than I ever have. But it never turned out really well for them. So, kudos for me, I guess. So, keyboard commandos I don't like because, well, they're morons. It's plain and simple, they're morons. Most of them couldn't fucking touch their ass with their hands if they had to. So, they just want to start shit and play safe in their home on their keyboards, because if they were to ever treat somebody the way they try to treat people on the internet, face to face, and let's just say it was the 80s, because in the 80s you could get away with beating somebody's ass in the street and everybody just went home. Nowadays, all you got to do is look at somebody the wrong way and they go complain and your ass sits in jail for 12 hours. So, also, and I'm not trying to dog any martial art. I mean, every martial art has a purpose. It may not be a purpose I care about, but they all have a purpose. I'm not super enthusiastic about the unchangeable traditional martial arts. They don't lend well generally to modern day self-defense, and again, it's really my main concern. Now, No surprise hearing that, but if you've ever watched my channel, you either know or can surmise I have no real interest in katas. I really don't have any real good things to say about them. I can say that in a certain point of view, I see that they have purpose. I guess that's the best thing I can say about them. Now, when it comes to my purpose, they don't have any for me personally. Now, and I've always said this, and I mean it, and I always will. One of the claims is that kata are just a bunch of techniques put together in a formatted way to teach people how to train these actual self-defense moves by themselves. All right, now, I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm just going to say this. This is how I personally think about it. If that is part of or your reasoning for doing kata is to learn these self-defense techniques that you can do by yourself and train them, then get rid of all of the fluff of the kata itself. Pick out the freaking self-defense moves that you want to do and just do the damn self-defense moves, and don't put them in this elaborate freaking format, this dance, this whatever it is, and just do the damn self-defense moves and practice them like that. I would be okay with that. Kata thing just, just doesn't work for me. Not my thing. If you like them, well, then I would really guess that either you're not into learning martial arts for real true self-defense, or you've got yourself convinced that that's what they're good for, and you just think that. Well, we're back to the house. I'm pretty close to my door. So there's the 2 mile. Again, I went really slow. We did a lot of chatting. I don't do these 2 mile walks for anything other than entertainment, so